There's always The Rock. Have you seen the videos of The Rock, how he's always buttoning up his cuffling? Because he's got a big bicep, he's showing it off. I can't pull it off the same thing as The Rock. Okay, so confident nonverbals. Let's look at a couple of examples. Just off body language, can you guess who the interviewer is and who the interviewee? Yeah, he's probably the one in the hot seat, isn't he? And part of that, he's more casual, leaning back. What's his body language showing? He's a little bit more closed off. If it's a video, he might be rubbing his hands. I can't tell in a picture. His shoulders are rolled forward. I mean, he is maybe leaning in, but it could be either. That's where we want to give people the benefit of the doubt and consider context with reading body language. But to me, this looks like he's a little slumped forward, a little low power body language. We already talked about that's what low looks like. So as you're sitting in the interviews, try to keep your shoulders back and try to show a confident posture. Another tendency that we'll have, though, when we're nervous is the self-soothing. And so there's a couple examples of this. For some reason, this area on our neck is a hot spot for when we're nervous. People will play with their ties or their necklace quite a bit to try to calm themselves down. So avoid these kinds of self-soothing, calming gestures during the interview. Avoid touching your face. Avoid rubbing your hands, because that's going to show that you're nervous, even if you really are. Try not to show it. Here's a couple of examples. Anyone recognize this guy? Okay. Let's see what his body language says. And you don't have to worry about the audio. In fact, I think on one of them he's talking about his mission or something, but just the body language. Does he look confident? What are some of the things he's doing? What are some of the self-soothing gestures and posture that he's doing? Would you hire him? Does he look competent? Probably not, right? Okay, what about this one? It's a lot more confident. Depending on how you want to play your cards. Maybe it's two.
I feel like he needs to put his feet up on the desk.
Yeah. We were talking at lunch about the cobra, putting your hands up, which is a huge power body language gesture. This one's probably a little bit more mainstream, a little closer to what you want. You'll notice that he's got good posture. He's also showing his hands. He's keeping his hands on the table. Jurors will find you more sneaky and less trustworthy if they can't see your hands while you're on the stage, because our inner meerkat wants to see your hands. It relaxes a little bit if it can see your hands. And so him having his hands visible is another way that he's communicating trust. Looks much better, right? Comfortable, confident. This is one of the ways that you could sit in an interview where you're not seeming too desperate or eager, but you're still engaged and still listening. Now, another thing to consider that I touched on before is where to sit. And I'm hoping the battery isn't dead on this. It just timed out. This is a fun video on the implications of where you sit and the dynamics, the power dynamics of when you're sitting.
Let's see what happens when we sit at a table. And can I use you? What's your name?
Steve.
Steve, come on up, Steve. Give me a big hand. Come on. Sit in there, Steve. Here we have a scene that's at a restaurant. It could be at an office. We have a square desk. Now, here's the problem with a square desk. First of all, whenever there are sides on a table, this occurs with a square and rectangular desk, people take sides, which means we take barriers. While me sitting at this desk in this position, I have put myself in a crossed arms position in relation to Steve, and our conversation will generally be negative. Now, the research shows that there's around a 25% greater chance of me persuading Steve if we had a round table than if we have a table with sides, because at a round table there's no what? There's no corners and barriers. Now, the other problem is that when we sit here, we unconsciously divide the table into two halves, his territory and mine. Now, if I try to invade his territory, he won't like it. Now, let's say we're having a business lunch and discussing a business, and I decide I want to rattle him. get him off edge. All I need to do as we discuss business is what's closely. And business has been pretty good, they tell me, Steve. Been all right. I just pushed the salt shaker across. And I believe you've been doing very well too, the ashtray. And apparently you've been looking forward to getting a rise in the company. And I reckon it's... can you see what happens? You see, all right. Give him a big hand. Thanks, Steve.
So that guy knew it was all part of the show, but as soon as his personal space started getting infringed upon, he couldn't help but distance and then block.